to the Upshot, Multi-World Disc Golf's podcast about the latest in the disc golf world. I'm the publisher, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me is Josh Mansfield. And we got a heck of a show for you today. Let's be honest. We've got this crazy Ledgestone tournament, Northwood Black brand new course, cancellation of the final round in MPO, dominant performance from Paige Pierce in FPO, and really just so much to talk about. And, you know, players have been weighing in on social media. I've been getting text messages about Northwood and so much to discuss today. So first and foremost, Josh, how was your weekend?
It wasn't too bad, Charlie. It finally cooled off a little bit here in Idaho. I think we set a record for like most days above 90 degrees. So glad it finally cooled off a little bit. It's still blistering hot in New York.
Well, it's humid here, but okay. I just got home last night.
Right.
I have I was out in your neck of the woods, really. I was in Bend, Oregon, calling the action alongside Valerie Jenkins for the Disc Golf Network. And so I got to enjoy Bend, Oregon for the first time. You got to go to Bevel Brewing, folks, if you're ever in town. Awesome spot. They had DJ one night, and then there was a big disc golf tournament party there one night. Nate Doss, I did not know this until talking about it with Val. Nate Doss won Best Brewer in Central Oregon in like a Reader's Choice Awards type thing in a magazine. And I mean, you know, we're talking about a part of the country where there's a zillion breweries. Like Bend, Oregon per capita breweries has got to be like the highest in the United States. So high praise. Check it out. Lots of good disc memorabilia on the wall, pictures of Ken Climo. And they've got disc golf on TV all the time. Apparently, there is footage of the people at the bar reacting to James Conrad's throw-in on 18 in the final round of the World Championships. So I got to get that because I think that would be pretty awesome to check out.
I really want to see that.
So let's dive in here. We're going to talk about the competition, of course, but honestly, we have some external stuff to talk about, and let's begin with Northwood Black. They took the gold course. We talked about it with Nate Heinold last week. They stripped down. They basically got rid of almost the entirety of the front nine, built an entirely new front nine, and they're calling it the hardest course on tour. Now, people keep saying this, right? People keep saying, oh, this is the one. We got the longest course on tour. We got the hardest course on tour. But this was clearly very, very challenging, particularly the MPO layout. And it was a physical and emotional battle for players out there over the two rounds that they played. Josh, what were your thoughts on Northwood as we've now seen it played just a couple times?
I thought I loved Northwood's gold, but I love Northwood's black. And it's hard because, you know, there was the issue with the coverage. You couldn't cover the front nine due to cell service issues. But when you got to go back and, you know, watch post-production and see some of those shots and just the way that the hole's set up, and I think I think that oftentimes we depend on score separation and clean score separation to write narratives for us. It needs to be close, right? And occasionally you'll get the charge like Calvin Heimberg back at Winthrop, for example, at the USDGC last year. That charge, even if it falls short, still writes an incredible storyline. I think the thing I love about a course like Northwood's Black is that it writes storylines for us. Right, you can see in an individual player's game, even if it isn't at the top, that the way that a round can develop can create storylines, because staying mentally tough and out of the rough in and of itself is something that's exceptional. But then once you are in the rough and once you have had a couple disastrous holes, how you're able to pull yourself back out, all of which can create storylines of either triumph or just utter defeat, depending on which player you're talking about. And I think that's something that is pretty unique to Northwood's Black about its ability to do so. And not saying that other courses don't create good storylines, but it just felt like every player's storyline was noteworthy, if in the top 25 even, when you looked at their rounds and the kind of, you know, that perseverance or just getting absolutely crushed by it.
Yeah, and like disc selection became incredibly important. It doesn't often feel like that's true. A lot of courses, players can choose from 10 different shot shapes and angles and discs. Whereas, out here, you're often forced to throw very specific lines in order to be successful. So it was really just, it was wild to watch. I mean, we watched Paul Macbeth in round 2 get worked over to the point where if you watched the coverage, and I think you'd have to watch it on live to really get the sense of this, he just was so frustrated it almost looked like he was giving up. He's just stepping up to shots and throwing them without even, setting up at all. Very, very un-Macbeth-like performance. Didn't get a birdie after hole number 4 and basically fell out of the tournament because he couldn't get it going. Like, the frustration factor was so high. You can see how the course could do that to you.
Without a doubt. If you just cannot get it going and it feels like the disc just doesn't, you've never picked up a disc in your life, or you don't know what's in your bag and just everything feels like it's not going right, like that can be hard. That can be devastating. And I think it's almost refreshing to see that happen to the top level pros, because it's not something that I think you see very often from our top competitors. So it felt very, it felt like a moment where the king of the world, I mean, just the best disc golf players on our planet, were taken down a notch and scoring scores that, and granted, if I were to play that course, I would probably shoot like 30 over. But to see scores in the top 10, 15 that resembled scorecards similar to my play at hard courses around me, it was something that was refreshing. Even though I know very logically that that's not at all the case, it still, for me, was just kind of, it was fun to see. It was exciting to see. It was good golf.
Well, you think about it. I mean, just to get this in there really quick, over-under line, best course was set at 5.5. You took the under, and it only 2 rounds went over 5.5.
Yeah.
Calvin Heimberg shot a 7 under in the second round, and Kyle Klein shot an 8 under in the third round. And everything else was 5 or less. So a pretty good line. I do get the dub. I do get the dub. But, nobody even really scratched double digits. I mean, it looked at one point like Calvin Heimberg might put together a real gem, but the birdies slow down in the back. And that, particularly through that stretch, 12, 13, 14, starting with the hole 12 that everybody remembers from the gold layout. But then, 13 and 14 have just vicious teeth themselves. Really very tough stuff. A little stat from the weekend, Juliana Korver in round 4 at Northwood birdied all 3, the only player in the entire tournament to do that in a round at Northwood. So shout out to JK for that achievement. All right. So is this course too hard, or do you think that this is an acceptable level of difficulty for at least some courses on tour? I don't think I would want to watch this every weekend, but I think certainly it's a nice change of pace from, you come from the preserve to here. What a difference a week makes. But is it too hard?
I don't think so. And, something that we talked about before is that the score separation for the top players seem to come from Lake Eureka. I think that as long as you have, if Northwood's Black was 3 rounds of Northwood's Black, I think it might be too hard. I like a tournament though. And I actually really like, when we first announced it, I was unsure of how I felt about the order of the rounds, doing the 1 round Lake Eureka, 2 rounds Northwood Black, 1 round Lake Eureka. In hindsight, I actually really like it because it feels like a get out of the gate hot at Lake Eureka and then just hold on, like white knuckle, like as tight of a death grip as you possibly can to those precious strokes. Get anything that you can off of Northwood's Black, and then walk off. And then you get to go back to Lake Eureka. So you get in the discussion at Lake Eureka, but then you have to stay relevant by not dying at Northwood's Black. And I really like the order. And I think if Lake Eureka was a different course, less scoreable, more difficult, I think that it may be a little bit overbearing. I think the combination of the two, though, they complement each other really well. I think two of the best complementing courses on course, perhaps. But I really think that the way that the tournament is set up is very thoughtful and very compelling golf.
I mean, the thing that's interesting, like when you look at a combined scores over 2 rounds at Northwood, so the co-winners, Calvin Heimberg and Ricky Wysocki, shot 8 under and 6 under respectively. And Eagle McMahon shot 8 under through 2 rounds. Andrew Marweed shot 6 under. Drew Gibson 3 under. Kyle Klein 5 under. Scores were pretty compacted. Again, that's through 2 rounds. Players who had a great round, once, like Heimberg and Klein, didn't have as good of their other round. Klein was over par in his first round out there. Calvin Heimberg shot a 1 under after shooting a 7 under. So there's definitely like a regression to the mean factor. And that's where I come in with it, like, is it too hard? Because we didn't see players, when we came into this tournament, it was all about, okay, you just got to survive, you just got to come out of Lake Eureka in a decent position, and then it's all about Northwood. But I don't really know that that's true. Like, it's clear to me that you can blow yourself up at Northwood and play poorly. Paul Macbeth, 1 round, boom, you're done. But ultimately, it feels like the actual separation that pushed, Ricky and Calvin, for example, to the win. They played well at Northwood, no doubt, some of the better scores out there. But the separation they got over other players in the top 10 came at Eureka. So that's an interesting fact. I mean, again, it's hard to tell. Like, how will this course play after pros have more time to play it? After the rough gets, trampled down a little bit, does it change the course? Do we start to see scoring drift up towards, people shooting 6 to 9 under instead of like 2 to 5 under for the most part? I don't know. I do think that it's cool to see the difficulty on display. And we want to read a little text message. Casey White got in touch and said, hey, I have some thoughts on Northwood to share. And so he sent him over. Here's what he had to say. Northwood Black is an incredibly challenging layout that is something that we have not seen ever on the Disc Golf Pro Tour. The difference between Northwood and the other hardest course you can think of, with an exception of a couple holes on the back 9, is there are very rarely trees in the middle of the fairway. If somebody is going to have their perfect round where everything they throw is going right, take about half the holes on that. Oh, sorry. If somebody is going to have their perfect round where everything they throw is going right, very rarely is something bad going to happen. But we didn't see that this weekend because as good as our players are, they are still human. You could take about half the holes on that course, and they would be a signature hole on almost any other course in the Midwest. The problem with having holes like that all on one course is you can't just shove a 170-person field out there and expect there not to be backups, which there were plenty. We were even worried about finishing our rounds in the daylight for the later cards. As good as the course is, it is still very new, and I'm certain we will see adjustments, including tee locations or how much rough is taken out on the newer holes. The good news is that Northwood Black has a bright future and a really good team working on it. So, a review from Casey White. We saw plenty of other pros talking about it on social media, how much they liked the course. Did not see a lot of negativity. I mean, I'm sure there's some players coming away feeling pretty frustrated with how they played out there. But let's talk a little bit about the 170 player thing. The backups were brutal at times. I mean, we're talking about like 45 minutes. And Nate Heinold acknowledged last week when we asked him that, yeah, there's going to be backups. Is that an acceptable approach to this, question at this point? Like, obviously a 5 or 10 minute backup is going to happen from time to time when someone buries their disc super deep in the woods and it causes a little traffic jam. But if you're having 45-minute backups, you have a problem.
Absolutely. And the argument that we often have with the backups and like the justification of it is, well, we need the depth of the player field in order to increase payouts. And I think most of the time that is true. That's not the case for Ledgestone. Like, Ledgestone makes a lot of money. They have tons of money. They had a $200,000 donation to charity. Again, I'm not saying take the money from charity, but I'm saying that their ability to raise money, to fundraise, to have their players packs, I mean, they could conceivably cut this field down a little bit and still have a very sizable players payout. And the other alternative, and I think this may be the more realistic option moving forward for certain places, especially Ledgestone, where we've talked about the incredible number of courses that surround Ledgestone. You need to have an MPO division, and then you need to have an elite division, where you have to be 1,000 rated or higher to play the elite division, and then the MPO division gets to play, different courses, just like the amateurs do. Split that off, because when you look, I just pulled it up, and I'm not calling anybody out, but there are several players who are below a 960 rated on this tournament. And it's like, those kind of players are going to get killed at Northwood's Black. And they did get killed at Northwood's Black. If you cut that field in half, just one, based on sheer numbers, but two, you have the pros who are shooting lower rounds and are staying out of the woods more, it increases the pace of play. And I think there are ways that you could work around that, especially when you come into the tournament knowing, oh yeah, we're just going to have backups. That's just the way of life.
And let's be honest, the cancellation of the final round. Okay, so first and foremost, obviously, they had to cancel the final round. Okay? If you think they should have been playing through it, you're completely wrong. There was pictures of lightning striking on the course. Right, and there were people talking about having lightning strike a tree right by them as they were walking off the course. So, to some extent, I almost wonder if they didn't stop play quickly enough. I don't know. You'd have to go back and look at the timestamp when they just made the decision. But clearly they made the right call to get people off the course. We're talking about major dangerous thunderstorms. It's just, you cannot have people on the course in those conditions. And then it got too late to play. And the rule book is very clear on what has to happen in this situation. You cannot extend the tournament by a day. These are not PGA Tour professionals who can just, say, okay, well, I'll take my charter flight to the next tournament a day later. No problem. I'll call my pilot. These are people that have to, a lot of people have a day job, or they only come to some events. You can't expect that they're going to just turn around and play the tournament out the next day. So from that perspective, they made the right call. That's what you have to do. But the fact that you had such a large field gave you no flexibility on getting the round in when you knew that thunderstorms were coming. You knew a day in advance, probably multiple days in advance, that thunderstorms were coming. So to me, it's not just about the backups. It's also about the ability to, showcase the sport in a best light. And so I think you have some options. One option is to do what they did at Worlds, which is where they split the MPO field and they had the bottom half of the ratings start their tournament at the other course. So I don't remember how deep the FPO field was this weekend. Obviously quite a bit smaller than MPO. Have half the MPO field start their round, start their weekend, at Northwood before or after FPO. And then have them play Eureka Day 2. When presumably there's nobody else on the course. So then, after 2 rounds, you have you have both MPO groups having played both courses, reshuffle, put the top half of MPO players now onto Northwood Black, like they did for the normal standard tournament, put the bottom half now over at Eureka. So they play Eureka again, and then they finish their round at Northwood. And so that's one option, right? So that way you're cutting the field in half that has to play that final round. The other option, of course, is just doing a cut. like the cancellation doesn't have to happen if you have the flexibility to say, okay, we're going to cut the field at the cash line after 3 rounds. And now that's the group that's going to play. So let's say it's 50 people. Well, it's a lot easier to get 50 people through the course. Not only are they the best players who've been playing the best so that you can get back out there and compete, but you have the option to do other things like a shotgun start or play 9 holes, to get through some competition. But you have no flexibility when you have these giant fields. And I think this is the problem that has to get solved next year. Like there's more ways to get money now into these tournaments besides player entry fees. And it's just no longer good enough to have fields so big that you end up with backups and problems with scheduling. It's just like, no, we need this to be focused on the touring professionals, and we need to thin out the ranks, at least with a cut line.
Well, and as we were talking about your solution of creating the B pool, I realized there's something even more ridiculous that would have made it completely possible. If round 1, you have men, Lake Eureka, MPO, you have MPO B pool at Northwood, or you put them at, Northwood. If you time it, the women could be at Sunset. I mean, there are ways you could work around this, especially because there are 3 courses. Right. Because you have Sunset Hills, Northwoods Black, and Lake Eureka. So
and only FPO is playing at Sunset, so you don't have to worry about that. When they're over at Sunset, you can just split the men on the 2 courses, no problem.
Right. So and maybe because round 1, women were at Northwoods Black, right?
That's right.
I guess the modified Northwoods Black. So if you do MPO B pool at Sunset Hills, Northwoods Black for FPO, and then Lake Eureka for MPO, then you could work it around in ways. There's so many ways.
Well, if you're going to do full B pool, you'd have to have them playing the same courses.
That's
unless
true.
You didn't want them to be able to cross back up for the chance to win. I don't think you could necessarily do that unless you're essentially
creating
saying that's not
different
MPO.
Division.
That's a totally separate division, which arguably you could do something like that. But I do think that if you're going to let somebody into the tournament in Open, you got to give them a chance to win the tournament.
Sure.
So, but I agree. Like clearly there's optionality with multiple courses and a significantly smaller FPO field, which gives you some flexibility to put some MPO players on the course on the same day. And so then you don't have a cancellation, but you have to give yourself that flexibility. And I don't understand the reluctance to have a cut line after 3 rounds. If you're going to run a 4-round tournament, I think you should basically just absolutely have a cut line. If you can't be at cash after 3 rounds, well, then you're going to lose. You're not going to cash much because most tournaments are 3 rounds. So deal with it. Oh, you didn't get your money's worth? I don't believe that. I don't believe that argument. People say this. Oh, well, players pay their entry fees. They want to have the same tournament experience. Well, give them the rules. The rules are make the cash line by the end of day 3, or you don't get to play the 4th round. Okay. They know the rules. If fewer people sign up, well, then that maybe solves the problem itself. But I doubt that people are not going to sign up to play Ledgestone simply because they're bad and they know that they're not going to get the 4th round. I don't believe it. I don't believe that that's going to happen. Or if it happens, it's going to be marginal. So I'm kind of tired of hearing that argument. And I think we need to establish cut lines at these bigger, longer tournaments.
Do you think that needs to be done at 3-round tournaments as well?
I'm less convinced on 3-round tournaments because 2 rounds, to be fair, PGA Tour cuts after 2 rounds. I don't know. I'm more on the fence about it with shorter tournaments. What do you think?
I guess my question, this really comes back to the ways in which we are permitting registration. I think is actually, if you go farther back, then the issue is before we even start the tournament, is the registration period. So my question is, and I don't have the answer to this, is for Ledgestone registration. My understanding is for big tournaments, they typically have if you're above X rating, you can register week 1. If you're above
Y
if you're
rating,
a
tour card holder, you're automatically qualified.
Right.
Yeah.
So
tiered.
Yeah, so you have that tiered registration system. But I'm also aware that at least in local tournaments that I've been seeing, it's becoming more and more popular because tournaments are filling so fast to offer a $50 whole sponsorship or, silver sponsorship that gets you registration ahead of time.
Guaranteed spot. Right.
Mm-hmm. And so you have players who otherwise, based on their, rating, probably wouldn't get in. Just because it's full by the time you get around to their rating, who just pay an extra $50, $100, and then they're in the tournament. I think once we have an established tour card for the Pro Tour and for Pro Tour and Elite Series events, and these people are guaranteed registration, and then you still do the tiered registration for ratings, that way local pros who are like James Proctor, for example, who may not hold a tour. I don't know if he'll hold a tour card or not because of how much he tours. But, conceivably, if you do then that protected rating registration afterwards, the folks like James Proctor are definitely going to be getting in because of how high the rating is.
Sure.
I think that's very like that is how I think that's probably the best way to have it done. And that way, I'm sorry if you're a 960 player who enjoys playing MPO on the Pro Tour and playing at Pro Tour events. I bet it's really cool to get to play, and maybe you get shuffled in with one of your pros that you really enjoy and happen to be on their card. But I think that it's time that there are enough players who are very high rated that it's okay just to start protecting by that rating.
And I have to say, I don't have a big problem. Like, if tournaments want to establish a way that you can basically pay to get in, like with a sponsorship or something like that, I'm okay with that. But we have to have a cut line then, right? You have to have other ways of, either you limit the number of players who can get in via that method. I think about Ironman. With the Ironman, everyone tries to qualify for the Kona tournament, and you have to have, different tournaments have different numbers of slots available. You have to finish at the top of your age group in terms of time. And if you do so, then you get to go compete at the World Championship out in Hawaii. And it's like this, big thing for really competitive triathletes. But one of the ways that you can get into Kona is like giving them $20,000 or something. So like you can get in with money. It's a lot. And it's like to charity or something. They make it some way that it's not just like a money grab, but it's still like there's an option to get in with money. And I think that's okay. I think that's okay in limited circumstances. But I also think that, you can't just try to push the size of the field to the absolute maximum capacity of the tournament, which we basically reached. I mean, as Casey said, it was getting dark. Like, it was legitimately dark at the end of round 2 for some of those late cards. Like, that can't happen. Right? How can that be happening? I mean, that's a failure of organization. And like, good for you. You made a really hard course, but if you're stuffing 1 million people onto it, that's frustrating. Now, obviously, I think most players feel like, wow, this is a great addition. We really like the fact that this is on tour. Can't wait to be back next year and see what refinements it has. So it's not like we need to throw out the whole thing. But I do think that this issue with backups and too many players playing on the final day, we got to solve it, because I think it's frustrating for fans not to be able to watch the final round, which is a problem that could have been solved, at least theoretically, had there been fewer players to deal with. Other thought about Northwoods, obviously no live coverage on the front 9 because they moved the front 9 down into like this valley, into the pit, and there's no cell signal down there. How big of a problem is that? And who's responsible for solving this in the future?
It's a big problem. And it's a big problem for the Pro Tour, especially because, and I wish I would have looked at this. I'm curious to see what Joe Mez videos viewership was relative to what they are for, let's say, just say D-Glow, and see if there's a substantial difference. because people didn't have the option of watching the live coverage. And I imagine at the very least that a lot more people were watching, those who usually watch live coverage were just, as soon as the Jomez video dropped, were watching it, that post produced, so that they could be ready for the final round and kind of be caught up. It's an issue for the Pro Tour. And I'm interested to see if the Pro Tour, because because it's the biggest problem is for the Pro Tour, it's on them to find the solution. I'm curious to see, though, if they decide whether or not they're going to find a solution or punt that problem to Nate Heinold and say, look, if you want Ledgestone on the Pro Tour next year, if you want it at Northwoods, you got to have live coverage. And then, so conceivably they could very easily just punt that to Nate Heinold. I don't know if that's the wisest strategy, because Ledgestone is it holds a lot of power with the sport and with players, and Northwood Black has gotten a lot of positive reviews. And so I don't know, what that strategy looks like. I don't think a standoff between Nate Heinold and the Ledgestone crew versus the Disc Golf Pro Tour is necessarily imminent, but I definitely don't think it's a good thing if it does come to that.
There are more views on Ledgestone round 2 and round 3, which ended up being final round, compared to Preserve. Not a substantial amount more. So like round 2, front 9, 210,000 views at Ledgestone. Round 2, front 9 at Preserve, 174,000. So, that's a noticeable difference. Now, who knows why? I think Ledgestone, if you go back to D-Glow, like that footage has been up on YouTube a little bit longer. 192 for round 2, front 9. I think Ledgestone, somebody was talking about it in the Ultra World Disc Golf Discord, which you can join if you become a subscriber for less than $4 a month at discgolf.ultraworld.com/subscribe. Somebody was talking about,
Charlie.
Yeah, thank you. Somebody was talking about how it almost feels like a major. Mm-hmm. Because of the money and the prestige and the challenge of the courses. And I think that's fair. And I think people probably, that resonates with people, with fans, right? They're like, oh, I'm going to tune in and watch Ledgestone. I'm certain that some of the people who normally watch live coverage said, you know what? I'm going to tap out. I'm just going to watch the Jomez because then I can watch the whole coverage. And that's fair. I think there's a couple things at issue here. The Pro Tour, like in Disc Golf Network, for them not to realize this was going to be a problem until the week of the event is not good. And I'm sure there was discussion about not playing Northwood. At least from the broadcast side, like you don't want to have to only show the back 9. And the thing is, like, you have this prestigious new course, you want to showcase it. And to some extent, I do think it's up to the broadcast side to figure out a solution in the future. And now they have a year to figure it out for next year. I don't think it's easy, but if you can you can maybe solve it. Maybe. It's really hard with all those trees, because a lot of solutions that would allow you to, like, let's say, get a signal and then send, beam it in via these dishes that can beam internet. Like you could get a Wi-Fi signal basically out into the woods, but how far is it going to stretch given all those trees, right? You don't have that point-to-point line of sight that you really need. So then, are you going to try to wire your cameras? There's huge challenges that I don't think people really recognize. They're like, oh, just get a satellite truck. And it's like, even a satellite truck isn't going to solve this problem itself. You have to have a way for the cameras to be able to have an internet connection throughout the woods, or you're running fiber, but like, how are you going to run fiber all over the woods? There are just major challenges, but I do think it's a pretty substantial issue. How much people have come to expect live coverage. A lot of frustration out there in the comment boards, and there's no obvious solution for the future. And I don't think Nate Heinold's going to be like, you know what, let's go back to the gold layout where we know we have cell coverage, because, you built this course. So maybe you can convince somebody to put a big fat cell tower in right in the heart of Northwood. Dress it up like a tree. Put it in the middle of the fairway. No, don't do
that. Casey White will have words with you if you do that. I would hate if our solution is because of live coverage, you cannot be in courses like Northwood's Black. Like, if there are too many trees,
just tech has to meet the challenge.
Yeah, I think so. I think that you lose some value to the sport when you lose courses like Northwood's Black. I think that those kind of courses are, that's what got me into disc golf, was just like being able to see and play through the woods. Like, that's something that is so unique to disc golf. Like, what's another sport that is played on a fairway that is 20 feet wide and just with gaps? That's something that you just don't have in a lot of other sports. It feels very disc golf to me. And I would be devastated to lose that, because we have to have the live coverage. I really think that there has to be ways that the live coverage can meet those challenges. It may take time. It may take time for better technology. Right? This may be a problem that we have to punt for a couple of years. But I think that it's a problem worth finding a solution to.
Yeah. I think you're right. Ultimately, I think you're right. And I think, decisions about some courses can be made on the basis of, is there cell coverage or not? But on others, I think you just have to deal with the fact that there isn't. And either that means that there's just not going to be coverage. It's kind of wild to watch people melt down over this, given that, even 2 years ago, you couldn't really watch much live disc golf and it wasn't that good. So much, it's come so far in such a short time that now there's like this expectation, and I get it. People are paying for it. They feel that they should be provided the service, but it's not like it's the end of the world to watch later cards playing holes 10 through 18. You get to see other players that you don't often see up at the top of the leaderboard throwing their shots, and that's fine. It's obviously it's not ideal, but at the end of the day, like, I think we need to step back and identify that there's been huge progress made. This is one of just a couple of events that hasn't been able to be fully streamed, and there was still coverage of all of the crucial elements, right? You get to see the players on the course for that 9 holes, and man, and in some ways it's plenty. Like, it's easier to deal with the Jomez because you don't have to watch all the slog through the woods. So, interesting stuff. Let us know your thoughts. Upshot at ultiworld.com. We are going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and talk about some of the actual competition at hand. So, stay with us. It's the Upshot. The Upshot is presented by Pound Disc Golf, makers of the best bags in the sport. Pound is a product-driven company committed to evolving with and elevating the sport of disc golf. As disc technology and emerging talent continue to redefine the boundaries of the sport, equipment and course design struggle to keep up. In order to develop products that will not only keep up with, but also help redefine the sport, Pound utilizes the latest in backpack design technology. From 3D modeling to technical materials, Pound uses current technology to push product development beyond the current boundaries. Learn more at pounddiscgolf.com. Welcome back to the Upshot. Kyle Klein was robbed. He was robbed. What more can we say? He was robbed. 5 under through 5 in the final round. Wipe it away. Off the board. Sorry, round is canceled. And look, I don't think we really need to justify why this is the right move. Players hadn't played the same number of holes. You got to play at least 9 for it to really feel like it stands for anything. It had to happen. But did it feel like this was Kyle Klein's tournament if this round had continued? What do you think?
If this was Northwood's Black final round, I would say absolutely. Because to turn around from, a lackluster start with Kyle Klein going that hot is not a guarantee. With Ricky, Calvin, and Eagle still all within 3 strokes of Kyle at the time of cancellation, at Lake Eureka, where, any of those guys could just on the next hole birdie and then just go hot and birdie the rest of the course, basically. And not all of them, but did Kyle Klein have a legitimate shot of winning? Absolutely. Was it in the bag? No, it wasn't. There were still, those 3 guys could have gotten on fire and taken it from him at any time because he was 2-3 holes ahead of him at that time. So, I don't think it's fair to say that he had it in the bag, but we were talking on Discord, just messaging back and forth after it happened. And, if you look at the payouts, I think it's fair to say Kyle Klein podiums. Like, I don't know if he wins it per se, but probably podiums. That's a $2,000 payout difference from his 6th place to 3rd place. So when you say Kyle Klein got robbed, like he literally got robbed of $2,000. They went in his
pocket.
Yeah, like it was in his pocket. They just pulled it right out. I feel bad for him. And
remember, that's coming off the 8 under at Northwood, the hot round of the weekend. So then he comes out and he's blistering. And the other players up at the top of the leaderboard were not coming out super hot in their first couple holes. Maybe a birdie, but also bogey. Like, it wasn't like they were also 3 birdies through 3. That was not happening. So Kyle Klein had put himself in a position to, take lead, and then it gets taken off the board. So, look, it is what it is. I think if you're Kyle Klein, you got to say, nothing I can do about it. Wasn't in my control. Can't really plan around the tournament getting canceled. And, he bounced back after a three over round in round 2 at Northwood, to come back out, shoot 8 under, and then come out super hot like that. Like, you got to feel like, hey, I have great momentum. My game feels great right now. Go into Idlewild and try to get that dub. Regardless, he is very for real. I think we have now definitely have enough information over the last 2 years of play. Obviously, his success as an amateur, to say that Kyle Klein is absolutely the real deal. He's gonna win an Elite Series event soon. I don't know exactly when, but this is one of the next big things in disc golf,
without a doubt. And I think the big thing is that Kyle Klein I've loved this season because my first show, we got to talk about, the best MPO young players on tour and who's to watch. Right. And it's been great to watch their storylines as they've gone through, and they've all had flashes of getting near the top again, but Kyle Klein's doesn't feel like a flash. Like, it's become notable when Kyle Klein isn't in the top 10 or top 15, right? You go look and you're like, oh, wait, where's Kyle Klein? Like, he didn't make it there because he's just so consistently good. And that consistency at such a young age is outstanding. So,
let's take a look. Where is he in the Disc Golf Pro Tour standings as we take a quick look at that? Ricky at the top of the leaderboard, Eagle in 2nd, Calvin Heimberg in 3rd, Paul McBeth in 4th, Kevin Jones in 5th, and you only have to go down to 8th to find Kyle Klein. And that sounds right. That feels right. He's been a top 10 player this season. He's been a top 10 player. Shout out to Ezra Aderhold, who's still in the top 10, despite some gnarly finishes, most of which have now been thrown out because you drop your bottom, whatever it is. I think it's 4. You get your top 8 finishes through the 12 tour stops. Well, Ricky and Calvin get the win. Innova, kind of gladly gloating on Twitter about their double up at the top. And, a funny image of the two of them kind of like stoically side by side. Some people making jokes about, great new buddy cop movie. And, to do it at a big, very, very, very prominent disc craft event, I'm sure that's a little extra sweet for them. Look, both those guys are playing great disc golf. I don't know that I have a whole ton to say about it. I think Ricky really bouncing back and looking like the best player again. after kind of going through a stretch where he dipped a little bit in the middle of the season. He's been very, very sharp, and this is the best we've seen Calvin play in a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months.
You know, I've been thinking a lot about this, about Calvin, and this tournament and how it feels. I mean, in terms of birdie percentages, he was 5% higher than anybody else. 48% birdie percentage. Next, then you've got Eagle and Kyle Klein at 43. Calvin Heimberg, 25 strokes gained tee to green. Second place, Eagle McMahon at 21, and then Chris Dickerson at 19. So in third. I mean, blistering off the tee. His gained putting, though, 1.78, which is, I don't know, going into Lake Eureka, he missed, I think it was like hole 2, he missed like a 15-footer, chained out left. And it feels like, when it comes to skill, Calvin Heimberg could string together wins like Eagle McMahon does. I think Calvin Heimberg is that talented. He has that ability. I'm beginning to wonder if we don't talk enough about Calvin's mental game. And it's partially, I think, because he isn't very expressive. I mean, Calvin Heimberg is just like very, I mean, stoic. And so we don't think about like the mental turmoil and struggles and difficulties that he has on the course because we just don't see them as much. I think we need to talk more about them because even in the final round, it didn't feel like Calvin Heimberg was there and that he was showing up ready to win. Granted, neither did Ricky or Eagle as much, but it's becoming a consistent theme that Calvin is having a bad round that is keeping him out of contention regularly. And I'm thinking it's more of a mental game than we are giving enough credit to, at least here on this show.
I mean, it's always hard to identify, like, are we seeing an actual, like nerves showing up? Is it random that this is just like happening occasionally? But I mean, it's hard to argue. Like he at Worlds, he looked amazing for most of the tournament and then just kind of fell off the track in the final round. So I find it hard to say. Like, I don't want to overreact to one stretch of holes, even one round, unless you're seeing it happen week and week and week and week and week, right? I think we can say that, Katrina Allen struggles with the putter and like the mental side of the game inside of Circle 1. I mean, we have years of evidence, right? But can we say that about Calvin? I'm not ready to say that. I do think it's maybe a area of concern. Is it something that, is going to keep happening? Well, then I think if we get to the end of the season and it feels like the final rounds when he's in contention, he continues to have struggles on the green, for example, or in any facet of the game, then we can say, okay, like, he may need to figure out how to find that same mindset that he has in round 1 in round 3 or 4.
And when you look at Calvin Heimberg's stats, he is top 10 in almost every category. Fairway hits, 78% 6th. Parked, 5th. Circle 1 in regulation, 4th. Circle 2 in regulation, 5th. Birdie percentage, 4th. Scramble percentage, 9th. I mean, it's all there. And then you get to his putting, and his putting numbers aren't bad, right? 84% in Circle 1X, which is good for 23rd, and 26% from Circle 2, which is good for 36. They're not bad numbers, but they are numbers that can keep him out of the top 10 or out of the top 5 or just out of the win. Sure. Right. And those, I think those numbers need to get a bit better. And it's not that Calvin last season, he threw the putter like he just knew it was already in the basket every single time. And it doesn't feel that way this time, anymore, at least. I mean, at the beginning of the season, it still even felt like that a little bit, but it doesn't. And again, remember, Calvin Heimberg is still 3rd in Pro Tour standings, 6th in National Tour standings. Like, I'm not out here saying.
We're talking about small margins.
Yes, we're talking about the difference from 1st to 5th. And if you look at his finishes, he's still doing well. Des Moines Challenge 2nd, but then you have Deglow 13th, Preserve 12th. Like, we were shocked at the Masters Cup because it broke the streak of Calvin being outside of the top 10
Right.
or top 5, right? Like, and now he's done it in this stretch of golf, this month stretch. 2 out of the 3 tournaments, he didn't make top 10. Granted, he won one. So, but it's just so hard to feel it. Missy Gannon's win at Des Moines felt different because they knew it was the final round going into it.
Mm-hmm.
This one feels like it kind of fell in Calvin's lap a little bit. And I know I'm probably going to get some heat for that, but it does. Like, that's how it feels to me.
I mean, let's just be honest. He shot 84% C1X this weekend. That's not good enough.
Mm.
That's like the lowest number. It's definitely the lowest number inside the top 5. Only Nico LaCastro at 83% was lower in the top 10. He gave up 7 strokes to Ricky on the green. So, I mean, it shows you how good he was off the tee, that he ended up tied with Ricky through those 3 rounds. But, yeah, it has to get better. Well, here's the thing about Calvin Heimburg. If it gets better, if he goes up and shoots around that 90% mark, which I think is kind of where you need to be if you want to be a winning elite level professional, he's going to win a lot, because you're giving us all the stats that would show us that. And really it has been this year, the putting that's held him back a little bit. On the other side of things, Ricky putted unbelievably this weekend. He didn't miss a C1X putt. He was 47% from circle 2. I mean, it's absurd numbers from Ricky Wysocki. He led the tournament in strokes gained with putting. So, I think if you play that round out, I probably expect Ricky to win, right? If that 4th round gets played, I expect Ricky to win. That's just, the legacy that he has, the ability that he showed on Eureka. Remember that final round at Eureka from Worlds 2019 when he almost caught Macbeth? That was insane.
Yeah.
So, that doesn't take anything away from Calvin Heimburg, but I just think like Ricky's clearly proven that, down the stretch, he can stare into the challenge and rise to meet it. And most of the time when we've seen Calvin Heimburg win, it's been when he's got a lead going into the final round. I would have to go back and look through the career stats to see if that's actually true. But in my mind, it certainly feels that way. It's like when he's in a dominant position going into that final round, he's able to hold on. But like, can you go head to head and get that win? I think that's an area of his game that could still improve. Elsewhere on the leaderboard, Eagle McMahon finishing in 3rd place. I'm sure he was frustrated not to be able to play that final round. Putter was great. For the most part, played really well. Maybe a couple too many OB strokes. A little bit off the fairway compared to other players. I mean, he had an unbelievable 67% scramble percentage. And I do think it's time. We got to kill it. It's dead. Eagle McMahon can't play in the woods. Dead. Slashed. Cut into pieces and thrown, strewn about the North Woods. He was great in the woods. He shot 4 under both rounds. For 8 under, which was, I think, tied for the best mark.
Yeah, Calvin
in the field. So it's over, folks. I mean, I think you see it right there.
I've been trying to kill it for months.
You have.
So.
I like we're literally not even going to bring it up anymore. It's done. It had a nice run. Rip Eagle can't play in the woods. 2018 to 2021.
You picked Drew Gibson a week early.
I know.
He had
man.
Sports Center top 10 with that throw in, made number 10. I don't remember what hole that was.
I missed that. That's cool.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. He made number 10 on Sports Center top 10. And man, circle 2 putting 59%. Like,
who would have thought that Drew Gibson with 2 rounds at Northwood would be the guy up in the top 5? Shout out to him. I mean, he really played great. He was throwing that buzz just like so pure. It was awesome to watch.
It really was. And I think that kind of gives credit to the fact, I think that is a noteworthy disc selection, is that he's consistently choosing a mid-range when other players are going to a driver. And I think it's an advantage Eagle talked about as well for himself, about getting to a fairway versus driver. I think it's the same thing with Drew Gibson. Like, that guy can crush a buzz. And so when Calvin is stepping up with an Eagle, he's stepping up with a buzz and just pures those gaps. Played great. 0 OB strokes for Drew Gibson.
Incredible.
Not one.
Incredible.
So,
shout out to Cole Redolin. Had a very nice weekend. Tied for 7th with Chris Dickerson at 12 under par. Who's popping up on the coverage a little bit. And who else? I feel like we didn't really talk about Matty O last week, but there he is in the top 10 again. So, Matt Oram, you're not always going to see him out at every event, but he pops back up at the Preserve, finishes 5th. Now here he is 10th at Ledgestone. He's ranked 9th in the world. He's just doing his thing. It's great when he shows up. When I see him in the lineup, I'm always excited because get to see him throw some awesome shots.
And then Andrew Marweed with the cookie mini. I love that so much. It's so. How can you be mad or like upset and around when you after you make a putt, you're just going to pick up your cookie and eat it? Like, what a power move! I love it. Other
news of note, Nico Locastro had his best round or his best tournament in quite a while, finished 9th place. And let's talk a little FPO. I mean, Paige Pierce was totally dominant. There's just no way around it. I mean, she was lights out throughout the whole tournament, start to finish. Shot the best round in round 1 at Northwood, was right there in round 4, couldn't be touched out at Sunset. And this tournament was over. I mean, arguably it was over after 2 rounds. It was definitely over after 3 rounds. As much as Paige downplayed and said, I won't feel safe with a 10-stroke lead. Well, she was very much safe. And it's still amazing to think, in that first round, she has 3 bogeys for the first couple holes. Things are not going well. She's 3 over par. She wasn't feeling confident in her practice rounds. And then comes out, gets the crazy throw-in eagle from 260. And boom. It was like getting shot out of a cannon. From that point forward, untouchable.
It was, wire to wire. If you look at her strokes gained on tee to green relative to the field, it is. It's,
give us a stat. Her versus second place strokes gained tee to green.
Second place or second, best strokes
second
tee
best.
to green? Okay, second best. Paige Pierce, 29.26 strokes gained tee to green. Second best, Sarah Hokum, who we said was like, this seems to set up well for Sarah Hokum.
It did. She played great.
She did. 17.9.
So 12 strokes better than the second best player in the field. That's absurd. That's absurd. But I mean, you can see it. There's holes that she can birdie that Sarah Hokum can't, particularly at Sunset. And Pierce was just dialed in. When she got out of position, she scrambled. A lot of times, she laced the fairways. She played smart golf. This was just a complete performance. And, I asked Val Jenkins, is this, cheapened at all because Kristen Tatar just left? I think Paige would have beat Tatar by 10 strokes out here too, to be honest with you. Maybe I'm not giving Kristen enough credit, but I think this was the A+ game of Paige Pierce. And it's very, very hard to beat her when she plays like this.
Two things I want to note real quick. Actually, 3 things. One, her circle 2 percentage she lost a stroke in circle 2 putting. Usually that percentage is a little bit higher. That's just something we've come to expect. Just be a bit better.
Yeah, I mean, she was she couldn't find the basket for a while there.
Yeah. Secondly, she had 9 OB strokes. The most out of anyone in the top 10. You have to go all the way down to Jessica Weiss at 15th to find someone who had more than her. So that a lot of OB strokes that, had she cleaned up, she could have been more dominant. I don't disagree that she probably could have, that she would have beat Kristen at this tournament. I think it just looked too good. I am a little bit hesitant to say that she beats Kristen by 10 strokes. And I think a big reason why, I mean, if you look at her round ratings, they're good. They're not the best we've ever seen. Like it was a dominant performance. Don't get me wrong. 1,010 rated round 1, exceptional. Round 2, round 3, both 995 rated, and then round 4, 990. I mean, exceptional, very high, very consistent. I think that if Kristen plays her A game, though, I think you have a bit more of a show than you're giving credit to.
I can grant that.
Not saying Paige doesn't beat her this weekend. I am very hard pressed to see Kristen, but I don't know.
I will also say Northwood did not give out particularly high round ratings.
No, it didn't.
So, like Kyle Klein's 8 under was only 1067 rated. I don't know what to make of that. In my mind, that tells me that scoring is a little compacted, which I think we saw when you look at the performance over 2 rounds. It means that like a marginal player is shooting 3 over, as opposed to like at a big course where that marginal player also shoots 3 over, but Kyle Klein shoots 15 under instead of 8 under. So there's just not as much there. On the other hand, you could also say these ratings make no sense. It's possible.
I'm not sure what to make of the ratings. It's weird.
Not that 1067 is a bad round, but you feel like you shoot the very best round ever on this ultra hard course, and it only gives out 1067. You're like, well, okay. But I take your point about Kristen Tatar.
Yeah,
I was probably being a little hyperbolic to say 10 strokes.
Just a touch. Just a touch. I mean, granted, though, I said Paige was going to win Worlds by like 7. So,
Well, yeah, I mean, we also got to give a shout out to Missy Gannon, who played awesome this weekend. Finished in second place fairly comfortably at the end of the day. And, I don't think there was any way that she was going to catch Paige out here. This is one of those tournaments where you tip your cap to Pierce. But, for the battle for second, which is like what everybody else was playing for, she really came through. I thought she showed great versatility in the game, good drives, excellent approach game, putting was on, bounced back from mistakes, always had a smile on her face, like just a great all-around performance from Missy Gannon to edge out Sarah Hokum, who finished in third.
I want to give a shout out to Maria Oliva. She's right now world ranking according to UDisc in 16th. She'd had a couple of okay places. It's hard to kind of gauge quite with sometimes the depth of the FPO field, depending on the tournament. But she had a 7th at the Masters Cup at De La, 9th at Preserve, and then 5th here at Ledgestone. So I'm interested to see how she plays. Next tournament she registered for, it looks like MVP Open in Maple Hill, and then Green Mountain Championship. If she plays 5th at Ledgestone, I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility that she finishes in top 5 at these next 2 tournaments as well. And with a 7th at De La, it's clear that she's comfortable in woods golf, but a 9th in Preserve means that she's got enough to keep it up. I think she could do well. So
she can throw pretty far.
Yeah,
she can throw pretty far. We saw it this weekend. Throws very low. At times that was biting her. She was kind of shorting some drives. But yeah, I think this is like a breakthrough performance in my mind. It's only maybe 2 shots better than, or 2 places better than what she did at Masters Cup, but it really felt like this is the first time we really watched her competing at the top, on the lead card, and looking like a player that belonged out there. And feels like we could see a podium finish from her before the end of the season. It wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility.
No, I don't think so at all. I think the other thing noteworthy, Katrina Allen, since she's won Worlds, has gone 5th place at Des Moines, 3rd at Deglow, 5th at Preserve, and now 7th at Ledgestone. And the problem was that those 3rd and 5th at Deglow and the Preserve, I mean, they didn't feel like, top caliber Katrina Allen. I think it's fair to say we haven't seen Worlds Katrina Allen since Worlds. I don't know what it is. I don't know if she's just chilling for the rest of the season because she's got the Worlds trophy in the bag. I doubt that's what it is. But she went from in the beginning of the season barely missing the podium and barely missing second place, even like third place was an irregularity from her, to has not yet taken a second place even, and only has one podium finish since Worlds. So,
I mean, I think we can just call it like it is. And I know it's like a little bit of a broken record situation, but her strokes gained putting this weekend was -3.5. And you compare that to the other players up in the top 10, she's giving up 9, 10, 11 strokes on the green. I mean, missing bunnies. Straight up missing bunnies. And if you're going to miss bunnies, you're not going to finish that well. So this is she's in the low part of the roller coaster right now, right?
Yeah.
Came down on the hill. Now we're here. She's got to come back out, start making those putts again. It's that simple. Her game off the tee was not as good as we've seen it, at Sunset in past years, where she's like carved this course up. But she was certainly good enough to be competitive out there. I think she was third in strokes gained from tee to green. So that's not the issue. I think even if she plays her best, she probably still loses to Paige. But, the putting can be a lot better than it was this weekend.
Sunset Hills round 2, for example, 44% C1X putting, 0% C2 with,
it was brutal.
10 misses.
She missed some putts that were hard to believe.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is. I feel like almost like she needs to do something different when she's within 15 feet. Like, don't throw it on the hyzer. Like, just pitch it in. Just pitch it in. So, the other thing I want to point out, Haley King, who, by the way, I picked to win this tournament, ended up tied for 5th. It's not like a bad result, really, but she was playing so well in round 2. She had taken the lead, and then she took a bogey on one hole where she missed a putt and completely melted down. And looked kind of like Paul Macbeth, just like throwing shots without really preparing or thinking about them. And I just really felt like we saw right in that moment that, like, Haley King is still young and needs to learn to manage emotions on the course better. Because when you're up at the top of the leaderboard and you have a bad break, you can't let that spiral you around and just go on tilt. I play a lot of poker. You're going to lose a lot of money if you do that. You have to have a short memory. You have to say, okay, bad break, next hole. And it's easier said than done, no question. But it was a total tilt. Ended up having a pretty brutal round in the back 9 after playing amazing in the front. Let me give you the stats real quick. So in the front, she has 4 birdies and an eagle, just 1 bogey. And then in the back, she has 4 bogeys and no birdies. Meanwhile, Paige Pierce has 5 birdies in the back. And it was over. It didn't have to be like that. It did not have to be like that. And I think this has got to be a learning moment for King, where it's like, you can't let the way the round is going dictate how you play in the round. You have to separate, like, okay, I had a bad shot from the next one. And it is hard. I think we can all identify with times when in our own game, even if it's just a casual round, where you've just let a round get away from you and you start feeling like, whatever, I just want to get off the course. But, if you want to be a professional player, I think you got to work on that. And it's a kind of tournament that Haley King could have been much more competitive in. Not that 5th is bad, but, I think a second place finish here was certainly not out of the question. And again, she was in the lead at one point.
I have never forgotten one piece of advice that Jamie gave on the show. I don't remember. I think it was, the first time you played in a tournament. You guys were talking about, when do you know it's time to move up from intermediate to advanced? And his answer was when you quit taking double bogeys. And I'm like, that's insightful. Like, that's That's insightful advice. So shout out to Jamie. I still think about that all the time. Haley King had 4 double bogeys. Like, it happens. You'll see it. But that many double bogeys is, on round 3, for example, she went OB twice on hole 9. Like, that's those are not just shot mistakes. That's golfing mistakes that you got to look and understand where you're at, how you're playing, and make corrections. That many double bogeys is going to keep you out of contention. It's plain and simple. That's what it's going to do. If those double bogeys turn into single bogeys, Haley King is now at 7 under and only 1 stroke back from Missy Gannon. That's
right.
it. That's all she got to do. Just get rid of the double bogeys. She podiums. That's it.
Yeah.
So it definitely feels like just Haley King's a young player. It's also encouraging though, because she's going to come back. She's going to keep doing better. She's going to learn that game, and she's going to kill it.
Yeah, and she had a good round in Northwood in the final round. One over was a good result. So yeah, interesting stuff in FPO. Valerie Mondahano in 4th place. Maria Oliva mentioned tied for 5th with Haley King. Heather Young tied with Katrina Allen in 7th. Alexis Mondahano in 9th. And Juliana Corver and Cynthia Ricciotti tied in 10th. All right, quickly before we sign off, of course, we're going to get you ready for Idlewild on our show Thursday. But starting tomorrow, Wednesday, is the European Disc Golf Championship in Konopište in the Czech Republic. And this is awesome because this is like the first time that we've had like the full European field. Everybody's there. Even Simon Lizotte flew out and is there. So you've got Kristen Tatar and Evelina Salin and Hannah Blomroos battling it out in FPO. You've got Simon Lizotte and all of those top players in the MPO side competing. And I'm excited to see it all unfold. I want to say there's not going to be live coverage. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure there's not. Although we do have some news about European live coverage. We'll cover it inside the circle on Thursday's show. But thoughts on the European Disc Golf Tournament? Your top-rated players in MPO, Marvin Tetzel, who's at 1050 right now, Niklas Antila, Linus Carlson, Simon Lizotte, and Vino Makala. I already mentioned the top FPO names. So I don't think we're going to make official picks, but why don't we pick our winners? Who do you think is going to win this thing?
Man.
I'll give you mine.
Okay.
I'm going to take Niklas Antila in the MPO side, and I'm going to take... Give me Kristen Tatar. I really like the way she's been playing. I think she's going to edge out Evelina Salonen for the win in FPO.
Okay. I'm going to take Vino Makala. I was trying to between Vino and Simon. I think Vino Makala is going to get on MPO. And then FPO, I'm taking Evelina. I think Evelina has just been like chomping at the bit, waiting for the opportunity just to throw down and say, look, I know Kristen's getting all the coverage and all the talk right now, but don't forget that I still am 2 points higher than her. She's going to show up. So
she's 6-0. No, 6-0 this season. 5 A-tier wins. Now, the fields have not been super strong, but she's beaten Hannah Blomroos.
Yes.
But not Tatar yet. So looking forward to that battle. By the way, the payouts in Europe are kind of brutally low. Just looking at Evelina Salonen's page, she's won 5 A-tiers, 4 of the events, Prodigy Disc Pro Tour events, and her biggest payout from that stretch is $445. I mean, this is why I think you're going to see some of these top European players eventually like tour almost full-time / live in the United States, where payouts for wins like that are $3,000 to $5,000.
Well, if you look at Kristen Tatar's page, if you look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 events before she came over to the United States, she won all 6 of them, all C tiers, won all 6 of them, and made $340. And then she came to the United States for 40 days and left with like 15K. Like
incredible.
An insane amount of money. I did see media coverage is going to be by the Spin TV, More Disc Golf, and ProDiscGolf.cz. I don't think any of those are live, not positive. I know Spin TV has done live before, but I don't think this one is. But there is coverage. So I know I'm going to be tuning in and watching some of that coverage. I'm really excited to see it. So
there you go. You can follow along on UDisc live as well. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will be back with you on Thursday. Apologies for this show coming out a little bit late on Tuesday. I was in transit and didn't get back. My flight I missed a connection getting back to New York, and I didn't get home until like 10:30 p.m. last night. So we recorded on Tuesday morning, and I'm getting it out Tuesday around late morning, noon time. So thanks for your patience. We'll be back Thursday morning with a preview show for Idlewild. We're also going to go inside the circle, and we've got some mail to catch up on, including something from Steve Dodge. So see you then. Thanks for tuning in. For Josh Mansfield, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long. We'll talk to you Thursday.